Hi guys, I'll continue to provide you with the drama that might unfold on Wednesday, delivering shocks on Y&R. Spoilers reveal the challenges Phyllis might face as she succumbs to temptations and manipulations orchestrated by Cain, who exploits Phyllis's weakness to force her to comply with his demands. Phyllis will be pushed to her limits. Spoilers suggest Cain will do something extreme to get Phyllis's attention, and if he targets Marchetti, Summer, or Daniel, Phyllis might be forced to consider giving up her current advantage. Therefore, episode 4 could be when she faces a difficult choice: continue to be stubborn or take a step back to protect her loved ones. Phyllis had never been the kind of woman who surrendered easily when cornered. She had lived through too many upheavals, too many personal battles, too many moments when the ground beneath her feet had given way without warning, to believe that weakness could ever be afforded. She knew better than most that in a world like hers, the moment a person showed hesitation, someone else would seize it as an opening and push harder. That was what made the situation so suffocating. The danger did not simply lie in what Cain wanted from her. It lay in the fact that he understood exactly where to apply pressure. This was no longer a simple clash of wills between two stubborn people used to controlling the game. It had turned into something colder, more deliberate, more invasive. Cain was not trying to outsmart Phyllis in a fair contest. He was tightening a psychological grip around her, using the thing she loved most as leverage, forcing her to confront the brutal truth that no matter how fierce or how unbreakable she seemed, she could never ignore the safety of the people she cared about. What made it worse was that Phyllis understood exactly what he was doing. She was not naive, she was certainly not blind. From the moment she sensed the shifts in his tactics, she knew this was not a negotiation. This was manipulation in its most calculated form. Cain was not trying to convince her through reason, and he was not seeking a compromise rooted in mutual interest. He had made a conscious choice to drag everything into the most toxic gray area possible, where the line between strategy and cruelty no longer existed. That awareness filled her with anger, but it also made her position even more unbearable. If an enemy came at her with force, she knew how to respond. If someone threatened her openly, she could push back with the same intensity. But when the person across from her was calm, patient, and intelligent enough to know exactly when to strike and when to step back, when to let fear do the work for him, every impulsive reaction became dangerous. Phyllis was not only fighting Cain, she was fighting the slow rise of dread inside herself. That dread did not come from fear for her own future. If the risk were hers alone, she likely would have refused to bend, no matter how severe the consequences. The real problem was that Cain knew her heart and had never truly belonged to power, status, or even pride, no matter how fiercely she wore those things on the outside. Her deepest vulnerability had always been her family, the people she loved even when those relationships were messy, fractured, and burdened by years of emotional scars. The moment the possibility of Summer being affected entered the equation, the moment Marchetti became a potential target, the moment Daniel's name hovered over the situation like an unspoken threat, every wall Phyllis had built around herself was tested in the cruelest way possible. She could live with being hated. She could survive being judged, misunderstood, even condemned. But she could not bear the thought that her choices might become the reason her children paid the price. That was why this time she was being pushed to her absolute limit. It was not just situational pressure. It was emotional strain stretched so tightly that something inside her threatened to snap. On one side stood her pride, her refusal to give Cain the satisfaction of seeing her yield, her instinctive understanding that if she surrendered now, he would win in the ugliest way possible. On the other side stood a far more powerful force, the fear that if she did not bend, someone else would suffer for it. When a woman like Phyllis is forced to choose between her own defiance and the safety of the people she loves, the decision stops being strategic. It becomes deeply personal, painfully human, and almost impossible to make without damage. Every option hurts. Every direction comes with loss. And what makes it so bitter is that she knows this even before she decides. No matter what she chooses, she will have to give up something she cannot easily replace. Cain seemed to understand that from the very beginning, he did not try to break with one dramatic blow because he knew that direct force would only make her resist more fiercely. Instead, he chose the more dangerous path. He applied slow, intelligent pressure, the kind that wears a person down from the inside. He made her imagine worst-case scenarios. He made her think about Marchetti not as a company, but as something vulnerable, something that could be damaged in order to reach her. He made her consider the possibility that Summer could be dragged into a war that was never meant to be hers. He made Daniel's name feel like a quiet threat hanging in the air, because even the smallest chance that her son could be hurt was enough to tear through Phyllis's defenses. This was the cruelest kind of manipulation. On a personal level, I think this kind of situation suits Phyllis perfectly because it exposes every contradiction that has always made her such a compelling character. She remains strong, sharp, and full of instinctive defiance, but that only makes it more painful when she hesitates out of fear for Summer or Daniel. It is not the kind of weakness that makes her smaller. It is the kind that makes her feel more real, more human, and far more heartbreaking. What lingers for me most in a storyline like this is the uncomfortable truth that sometimes people are not defeated by their enemies alone. Sometimes they are undone by their love for the people they cannot bear to see hurt. And if Wednesday's episode truly leans into the emotional conflict, then it could become the kind of climax that does not need to be allowed to leave a lasting mark. It would be heavy, intimate, and quietly devastating, the kind of emotional ache that remains even after the scene ends, like a tightness in the chest that never fully releases.